All right, let's catch up with Rand, Matt, and Thom as they make their way to Whitebridge.
Hello and welcome to the Doctors Who podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Chip.
My name is Brian.
And so we're doing something a little crazy tonight. We are not going in a sequential chapter order. So chapters 24 and 26 are Rand and Matt centric, and Perrin is 25 and 27. So we're breaking them out that way. So this episode will be the Matt and Rand focus.
Thom. Yep.
And then the next episode airing next week will be the Perrin and Egwene focus chapters. So why don't we jump in, and we'll start with Chip.
All right, so this is our first Rand point of view chapter, I think, since they split the group into multiple pieces. So it's kind of fun to see Rand trying to figure things out on his own. Matt's kind of showing some signs of some weirdness that's going on. And Rand has actually got some odd behaviors too, where he's climbing to the top of the mast of the spray and then doing some weird stuff. So that's mostly in chapter 24. And then 26, the action kind of heats up a little bit more towards the end of it. The one thing I liked in 24, there's not a lot of action, but there's a lot of subtle exposition and a lot of seeds being planted for future events that may even be books away. But I'm still very impressed with the way Jordan plants these seeds. That how did he know that this is where he was going to go? I mean, he must have had this thing plotted out so well. He's even there's a passage in, I think it's in the dream sequence, that ends up, I think, in A Memory of Light, which is 13 books later, that it kind of almost ties it back together. Which, Chris, we could have a conversation on that, like a spoilery conversation someday, which would be fun. But what I do like is when Domon, the captain of the spray, is talking about the Age of Legends, and you start to kind of get this history of how we got here. And it's a little bit, it's not really tropish, but maybe a little bit, but it seems like a lot of fantasy stories and even some science fiction, if you think of Terminator and stuff, it's all kind of, there's this great society that something bad happens and it kind of crashes down and descends into a much more post-apocalyptic type world. Not really post-apocalyptic, that's not the best term, but that society degrades basically, and then it's left to a hero to arrive to help rebuild eventually. So anyway, I'll stop there.
So there was a lot that happened in here. Like in total, I mean, it's 2 chapters, but it felt like it kind of was a little slow at the beginning when they were on the ship, and I really was not sure about how they were going to react with the crew. I really like the emergence of Gelb as kind of like a secondary villain. Like, he's not really, or more of an antagonist, I suppose. He's not really. He just has these suspicions and won't let them go. He's kind of like the conspiracy theorist of the crew of the spray. And it was fun listening to him both on the boat and see how he reacted around Rand and Matt. And then again, when they were, outside the inn in Whitebridge, just how he was that character kind of plotting against them, if you will, or spreading this news about them. I really liked some of the mystery. Like, I know Chip talked about Rand all of a sudden got the urge to go climb up to the highest point on the mast. And then moments later, he was down on the ground and he looked up and he was like, was I really up there? You just kind of got the sense like there's something else going on behind the scenes. Don't really know what it is. So it's kind of a nice planting of the seed. And I'm sure they're going to touch back on this later. But I also loved the ending of Thom here. They gave him a lot more of a backstory towards the end. They gave some info about his nephew, and I just thought that was a really great way of, at least to this point, kind of wrapping up his character up till now. So I liked kind of Thom's arc thus far. That was a big highlight for me.
So a couple of things that really stood out to me. First off is the shift we see in Matt's personality and how he goes from, carefree, joking prankster to just like solitary and suspicious of everybody. And then we see when Rand comes down off the mast, he's able to see that Matt's got the dagger. Another thing, excuse me, is Rand's behavior on the mast is also interesting. And when we get into the discussion, there are a couple of dots that we can connect, I think. But I also have to agree with Brian that Thom and his arc are really impressive, especially in chapter 26, because he really is becoming a father figure to Rand and Matt. He's trying to get him to go south to get away from the Fade that's looking for him, but when they don't want to go, he's like, no, I can't just leave you guys here. And then when the Fade does show up, he's like, all right, I'm going to attack this thing so the kids can get away. So I really liked, getting that from him. And then, left with that, what became of him. So that was pretty cool. All right.
I think that adds a lot of depth to Tom's character too, that we learn more about his nephew, and that, in turn kind of explains why he is kind of becoming that fatherly figure to Rand and Matt, not so much Perrin since he's not there, but the whole, distrust of the Aes Sedai. And then, we see a side of Thom that we really haven't seen before, where he basically goes and engages in combat with the Fade, which, are apparently very hard to kill. So but Thom's apparently got some skill.
Well,
and
that we didn't really know about up until now.
I love the imagery too. He had that colorful coat, and he was, kind of the talk of the town. He was the gleeman. And when he realized that he had to sacrifice his signature look, in order to kind of blend in and help the boys out, I mean, he was willing to change himself in order to sacrifice himself for the greater good. So it also mentioned at least twice in these chapters that he had white hair. And I know we had talked about his appearance at the very beginning, but it was, again, a nice callback to, like, I think Jordan, when he wrote the white hair, it made it almost seem like, that was the father figure. It's not just like love of brother, it's more like love of child. So I thought that was a really good touch there.
Yeah, and it kind of draws on some of that mythology of the mentor figure, whether it's Gandalf or Obi-Wan Kenobi or somebody like that too, right? Obviously, Moraine also fills that role, as she's the one that can use the one power and can kind of teach and guide, but I think to an extent that is also Thom. He talked a little bit about his nephew and how he got tied up with some Aes Sedai and it went bad, and Thom wasn't there to help. So I think that is seeing Rand and Matt and Perrin in that situation, kind of pulls at his heartstrings a little bit. So, yeah. I wanted to talk about Rand on the mast. And I wanted to go back to the chapter with Moraine and Nynaeve. So when Moraine was talking to Nynaeve about, channeling that first couple of times, like 7 to 10 days later, she might come down with a sickness. And, when they were in Berlin, Rand was, I think, feeling a little sick. And then he did something foolish after that. And now he did something foolish again. Didn't have the sickness, I don't think, this time. But the things that Moraine told Nynaeve was, this sickness is probably going to be followed by taking foolish chances, acting giddy, or feelings of exhilaration. So that's another, I think, example of Jordan saying, recognize these things because they're happening to somebody else as you're reading.
It's almost like manic depressive behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
I almost wondered if it was, and again, as a first time reader, I almost wondered if it had something to do with the dream. You know, if he's not sleeping well, that's going to be
Sure.
problematic, first of all. Like he woke up from that dream, like that was a another long dream sequence. I think this is the third
Hmm.
or fourth that we've had.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, he kind of touched his mouth, like just felt the blood, and it just sort of had that odd start, ominous start
Hmm.
to the chapter. So I
Yeah.
almost wondered if some of that was attributed to the dream, but um,
Well, and I did a
I don't
little
know.
bit. I was trying to do some mental math, and I'm like, okay, he said it about on day 4 of being on the spray, he was up on the mast, and if it's 7 to 10 days, that would have been 3 to 6 days prior to that. Um,
Mm.
I'm trying to remember when the last time he inadvertently would have potentially touched the source.
I thought it was when they got on the boat, wasn't it? Didn't he
Oh
loosen the
yeah, that's
mast
right.
and
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's right. Okay.
I forgot
Yeah.
about that.
Yep.
because that's
Yep.
when Gelb was
Thank you.
supposedly not paying attention and
Yes, that was it.
Yeah. Who forgot to tie those masts down?
yeah.
Oh, they probably were tied.
Um,
Mhm.
the oh, I just had it here. Okay, I don't know. It's gone. I had it. I had something I was going to mention, but
I'm
it
sure it
was
was
excessively
profound.
profound. I can't even tell you.
Wow.
So, yeah. But maybe we can jump to Whitebridge
Mm-hmm.
because there were some things that I definitely wanted to touch on in Whitebridge, and some of it also goes towards the world building and the lore and talking about the White
Mm-hmm.
Bridge that they sail under and how uh, it gleamed milky white in the sun and it looked all of one piece as if it had been carved from a single stone. And Doman says, yeah, but you get it wet, it's not slippery, it looks like it's made of glass, but it's not,
Hmm.
and nothing can break it, nothing man-made can chip it. So you know and Thom's like, oh, I've always thought it was a remnant of the Age of Legends. I assume that's how Thom
Hmm.
sounds when he talks, but I could be wrong.
You probably need to get your pipe out so you can do your
Oh yeah,
Tom
and maybe I
impression.
shouldn't have shaved. I should have just let these go. Well, not shaved, but
Yeah.
trimmed. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and then obviously, we have the stuff continuing to happen with Gelb, and when he gets kicked off the boat, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
we've not seen the last of him. So,
No, he's coming back.
yeah.
Well, this
I think
is.
it's.
Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
This is the first time that I think we've actually had anyone accuse the group of being dark friends. I mean, I think that might be worth
The
mentioning that.
Children of the Light did in Berlin, yeah.
Oh, did they?
Like Rand and
Oh,
Matt,
Hmm.
and
okay.
yeah,
My bad. Good call.
yeah. I don't think they
Yeah.
specifically
What I thought
said
was kind of.
that, but they basically said they didn't walk in the
Mm-hmm.
But that's
light.
who they're after. That's always they
Yeah.
suspect everybody. So yeah. I thought it was kind of fun that Gelb was when he's in I can't remember the inn's name here, but when he's talking about
Wayfarer something
Trollocs
or
and
another.
that's
Yeah.
right, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when he's talking about the Trollocs and these people are like Trollocs, there's no Trollocs around. They died in the Trolloc Wars or they're up in the in the Blight or whatever the Borderlands. I can't remember all that stuff, but nobody wanted to believe him. But he was so adamant that yeah, this really happened. And the other thing I liked was how, as soon as they were off the boat, Thom was quickly kind of planning that, we need to get in and out and nobody should recognize us. Nobody should remember that we were here. We're going to get some information. We'll see if Moraine or Lan or anybody's been through, and the reason he even picks the inn, it's like on the most, traffic street so that, people would notice if they've been by. And I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It just, again, it kind of goes to that, it's really kind of a Thom chapter in a way where there's
Yeah,
just a
that's
lot of
true.
character
That's true.
building going on here with Thom, and then it leads up to his battle with the Fade.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I gotta.
Is it worth noting? And so I looked it up. It was the Wayfarer's Rest was the
Okay.
name of the inn.
hmm.
Um, but I distinctly remember in the writing that that Jordan or that Rand's notation was, are all inns run by fat, balding
men.
innkeepers?
Yeah.
Now, I guess that goes to show, like, would you trust a skinny innkeeper
That's true.
Or a
Maybe.
skinny chef.
or a skinny chef?
Mhm.
But
We do, with that innkeeper, though, we do get some information about what's going on in the larger world, right? So we hear that Loghain, that false dragon,
Oh.
has been captured. The Aes Sedai were involved, and they're like parading him through every small town and village and showing off that, hey, look, we got him.
Mhm.
There's no danger. Look how we helped you, type thing. And I think they said they were on their way to Camelin to present him to Queen Morghese. So
Yep.
you do get like some of that larger stuff. I mean, I think the last time they talked about Loghain was maybe the Padan Fain chapter still in Eamon's
I
Field,
thought
or
we heard about
maybe
him. I thought we heard about him in
at the
Barrelon.
end. Yeah.
I thought we heard
yeah,
about him
yeah,
at the
he
end in
was
Barrelon.
there.
But what's and it's kind of interesting how Jordan's kind of starting to pull some of these plot lines together. So we know Loghain's being paraded to Camelin. We know that Rand, Matt, and Thom are going to be
Sure.
heading toward Camelin next. From the way they've talked. So there's probably
Yeah.
a good chance they might see Loghain.
Yeah. And then we find out that a Fade and one other person has been asking about them in town as well. So
A crazy man.
I think he was described as a Weasley fellow.
Someone we've
Yep.
probably met before.
Any ideas, Brian?
I was thinking about this, and I couldn't think of who it would be. I'm guessing it's someone we've met, kind of even just in passing, but I can't think of who that would be.
Hmm.
I'll think about it some more.
Yes, you do that. And then we get to that point where Thom kind of makes that decision to attack the Fade head on, so Rand and Matt can get away, which is a pretty cool section of this chapter. And I mean, it just, the imagery it evokes is pretty awesome. With him with his his knives out, just charging a Fade and like knocking it to the ground. So
That, and I mean, it kind of creates that panic where everybody's fleeing, so then nobody really notices when
Right.
Rand and Matt come, running through the gates with everyone else. So
yeah, I mean it. And if you think about this from a larger story standpoint, Jordan started the first chunk of this book with the entire party intact, and then it kind of splintered. Rand and Matt have had a mentor in Thom. Perrin and Egwene have found Elias. Nynaeve is with Moraine and Lan. So, like, each one of the Eamon Fielders kind of had this almost mentor figure to help them since they got split up, and now Rand and Matt have kind of lost theirs. So how are they going to fare? Are they, their time with Matt and Moraine and Lan, has that given them enough to survive on their own while they're being hunted by Trollocs, Fades, Dark Friends? All while Matt is descending into
some sort of
Yeah.
madness. But we've also, we know that they've got all of Thom's instruments, and he was teaching them, so they could sing for their supper, and might be some of that coming up.
All right. So speaking of coming up, next episode, which drops next week, we will be discussing chapters 25 and 27, which are the Perrin-centric chapters. So if you have enjoyed this, please use the like button and the subscribe button below. We also invite you to use the notification bell so that when we post new content, you are notified. And also, please leverage the comment section. We would love to engage with you. We'd love to have a conversation outside of this video. Thank you again, and until next time.
Alonzi.